your forehead touches the floor. For 1 second, something happens that no instrument can measure. Then you sit up and wonder, did that count? Was I received? Here is what nobody tells you. The proof you keep searching for is the wrong proof. Tonight, you finally learned the real signs. You have prostrated thousands of times. Every single time, you scanned yourself afterward for a feeling, and you called that feeling the answer. That habit is the first thing we have to break. If you pray 5 times a day and have done it for years, and somewhere along the way it stops feeling like anything that is not weakness, and it is not your faith failing. It has a name, and the masters wrote about it. You do not need more understanding. You need something to do tonight. That is this book. Feel your prayer again. 120 practices, 14 sections, each traced to a named master and text. The link is in the description and the pinned comment. Acceptance is not a feeling. Most people are hunting for a feeling. Usually tears. A warm wave in the chest. A lump in the throat. Somewhere along the line you decided this feeling was the receipt. If it comes, the prayer works. If it does not, something will fail. This is a mistake, and it is worth being exact about why. Acceptance is not a feeling. It never was. A feeling is just your body reacting nerves, breath, chemistry. You can make yourself cry with a sad song or an old memory. None of that is prostration. If acceptance were only a feeling, you could fake it on command. And a faked feeling is worth nothing to the one who already knows your heart. So put that question down. Did I feel something was never the right question? Now hear what the Prophet, peace be upon him, said about this exact position. The closest a servant ever comes to his Lord is while prostrating. Read that slowly. He did not say the most accepted position. He said the closest. That is a measure of nearness, not a verdict. And those are two very different things. Al-Qurb, the nearness, Al-Qurb, means nearness. Ibn al-Qayyim takes it apart in his book Mada'arij as-Salikin. He does not treat it as one warm glow. He splits it into levels. There is a nearness of knowledge. Allah knows everyone this way, the believer and the denier alike. Nothing sits outside his sight. There is a nearness of help given to those who strive. And there is a third, rarer nearness. It comes down in moments of lowness and worship. It is given to the servant who has bent low enough to receive it. See what that means. Prostration is not you asking for nearness. Prostration is the shape nearness takes when a small body tries to hold something too large. Look at what your body actually does. Your head goes to the floor. The head holds your mind, your name, your whole story of who you are. It drops below your knees. It drops below your heart. For a few seconds, the order your ego lives by is gone. All day it says, I think, so I stand above the ground. In prostration, that sentence flips. Your head is now where your feet usually are. That is why this position was named the closest, not standing, tall and proud, not even bowing, where your head stays level and still watches the room. Prostration puts the watcher on the floor, and here is the trap already waiting for you. Your ego hates the floor. It fights the drop the way a held breath fights the release. So the real question begins right here. Did the proud part of you ever actually reach the ground? Or did it stand back, arms folded, and keep score? When the asking runs out, Al-Ghazali gives an entire book of his to the inner secrets of prayer. Inside it, he says something that sounds almost backward. The heart truly present in prostration will often forget the very thing it came to ask for. Sit with how strange that is. You were told to bring your list into prostration. The illness you want healed. The marriage you want mended. The exam. The child you are still waiting for. Bring all of it. Ask by name every single time. Asking is worship, not a distraction from it. But Ghazali's point is quieter than that. In the deepest moments of real prostration, the list itself can dissolve. Not because you stopped caring. Because being present and asking are two different modes of the heart. They do not always run at the same time. Here is the machinery underneath it. A request needs two things and a gap between them. You over here asking, Allah over there being asked. Even at its most sincere, it is a distance you cross with words. Being fully present closes that distance. When you have truly arrived somewhere, there is no you standing far enough back to build the sentence. You are not bargaining with the floor. You are simply on it. So this is the first sign, and it is subtle, which is exactly why you can trust it. Not that you never ask. Watch instead for the moment the asking runs out on its own, where you fall silent in prostration, not because your mind wanders to your phone, but because there is genuinely nothing left to say. And that silence does not feel empty. It feels full, occupied, like something is there. Who lives here? The person who came in with a demand and left without one. Not because the demand was answered, because for a few seconds, the one making the demand stopped standing apart. And here is the trap of this sign. The moment you notice it and think, good, the words ran out, I must have arrived, you have just stepped back out. A heart cannot watch itself close the gap. The watching is the gap. That is why you can only ever recognize this after you rise. Never build it on purpose while you are down. The fear that settles there is a verse that describes what real contact with Allah does to a heart. Its order is stranger than most people notice. The believers are those whose hearts tremble when Allah is mentioned. Then, when His verses are recited, their faith increases. Then, upon their Lord, they rely. That is Surah Al-Anfal, the second verse. Read the sequence. Trembling first, then faith rises, then reliance, trust, ease, the whole system settling. Not fear replaced by calm, fear followed by calm. Both are real, one flowing into the next. This changes what you should expect on the floor. People assume acceptance should feel peaceful from the first second, warm, steady, like sinking into warm water. But watch what a body actually does near something far larger than itself. There is a spike, a tightening in the chest, sometimes a shake in the hands, a catch in the breath. It is the same physical response as standing at the edge of a great height and looking down. That is not you failing. That is an honest reaction to size. Your nervous system is telling the truth about what you are in front of. So the sign is not the absence of that spike. The sign is what happens to it next. Does the trembling climb into panic, the system treating this as a threat, wanting to flee, wanting the prostration over? Or does it settle on its own without you forcing it, into something steadier than you were a minute before? Who lives here? The person who went down braced and came up calmer than he started, and never chose that calm. It arrived. And here is the trap of this sign too. You cannot fake settling. Anyone can shake. But the quiet that comes after steadier than where you began is not something your will can produce. Try to force it, and you have only produced tension wearing the mask of peace. It either descends or it does not. Your only job is to notice afterward which one happened. That verse trembling, then faith, then reliance is one teaching, traced to one text. There are 119 more practices in the book, in order, each telling you what to do and how long it takes. Feel your prayer again. Description and pinned comment. Relief where you feared defeat here is a sign almost nobody expects to meet on the floor. Your ego walks into prostration, certain this will feel like losing. Forehead on the ground. The lowest a person can go, in front of witnesses who are not even in the room. Surely that registers as defeat, as being made small, as a shame. Watch closely, and you find the exact opposite marks the real thing. Think about water reaching the lowest point in a valley. It does not fight on the way down. It does not feel like the valley floor as an insult. It pours into the low place and goes still, because the low place is where it was trying to get the whole time. Gravity is not punishing the water. Gravity is completing it. The valley floor is not the water's defeat. It is the water's home. Your ego is not water. Your ego fights the drop the way a held breath fights the exhale. It clenches against the very release it was built for. But the thing underneath the ego is built differently. The masters simply called it the heart, the real organ that senses Allah. That part of you is made the way water is made. It was built for the low place. It has been trying to get there all day, under all the noise. And when the ego finally stops fighting, even for a few seconds, what rises up from underneath is not grief. It is not shameful. It is a relief. The plain, unmistakable relief of a held breath finally going out. This is the third sign. Not sadness, not the dramatic collapse some people have learned to perform because they saw it praised in others. It is a quiet, almost embarrassing sense that this is right. Like you were carrying something heavy all day and never noticed the weight, and for 4 seconds on the floor you set it down. And you remembered what it feels like to stand without it. What it feels like from the inside is strange, because you braced for loss and got release instead. You went down expecting to be made small. You came up lighter. Who lives here? The person who stopped defending himself. For most of the day, you guard a picture of who you are. On the floor, for a moment, you stop guarding it. And nothing bad happens. That is the relief. The relief is the tell. Because relief is what a thing feels when it finally reaches where it belongs. And here is the trap of this sign, the sharpest one yet. The moment the relief comes, the ego wants to claim it. It whispers, "See how humble you are, look how low you went." And just like that, it has stood back up, using your own lowness as a trophy. The relief was real. What you did with it was not. Pride in your own prostration now. Hear the danger that sits under all three signs. It is laid specifically for the person who took the last 3 sections seriously. The moment you start hunting these signs, checking for them, grading each prostration against the list, rising disappointed because the trembling did not settle on cue, you have built a new performance. A quieter one than forcing tears. More sophisticated, harder to see, but a performance all the same. You have turned the floor into a test you are trying to pass, and a test you are straining to pass is not surrender. It is the ego climbing back to its feet, the exact moment you thought you had put it on the ground. Ibn Allah circles this again and again in his book of aphorisms, Al-Hikam. His warning is aimed at the worshipper who becomes so fixated on the signs of acceptance that he starts drawing a secret pride from believing he received them. It is a hidden kind of showing off, and it is more dangerous than the open kind, because it wears the robes of devotion. It is harder to catch precisely because it looks like worship. The moment you conclude, with satisfaction, that one counted, I felt the signs, I am one of the accepted, you have handed your ego the trophy. And your ego was never supposed to be allowed back in that room. What it feels like from the inside is comfortable. That is the danger. It feels like progress. It feels like you are getting somewhere. Pride does not arrive as pride. It arrives as reassurance. Who lives here? Almost everyone who has ever tried to pray better. The moment you improve, a small voice starts keeping a ledger. It counts your good prostrations. It compares this week to last week. I am proud of the counting. This is also exactly why you were never given a receipt. No confirmation screen, no sensation that reliably, mechanically means yes. Because if one existed, people would chase it, copy it, and in the end, fake it. The whole practice would rot from the inside, the way any sacred thing rots the second it can be gamed. The uncertainty is not a flaw in the design. It is the one thing keeping the floor honest. The exit from this trap is the hardest exit in the whole map. You do not pass it by catching pride. Catching the pride and feeling good about catching it is just the same trap, one floor down. You pass it only by letting the whole question of your own rank go and going back down anyway, without needing to know how you did. The one who stopped checking picture the person who has fully passed through this teaching. You would not notice him at first. That is the first thing to understand about him. He prays in the back row. He does not weep loudly. His prostrations are not longer than anyone else's, and he does not want them to be. When he rises from the floor, his face does not carry that look of the one that quietly asks the room whether it saw how moved he was. Something happened to him that is rare. He stopped checking. He put his forehead down for years, and somewhere along the way he lost interest in his own scorecard. He no longer rises wondering whether that one counted. You can feel it near him. There is a stillness to the man that has nothing to do with mood. It does not lift when things go well or sink when they go wrong. It sits underneath both. He has the calm of someone who is no longer auditing himself because he handed the audit to Allah and never asked for the results back. He is not cold. He is warm in a way that costs him nothing because he is not spending his attention on himself. He listens fully. He is easy to be around. He carries no ledger of his own good deeds, so he keeps no ledger of yours either. He does not judge where you are, because he genuinely forgot to rank himself. And this is the quiet magnet of him. Everyone else in the room is performing, a little, all the time, managing how they are seen. He stopped. And that stopping is the most attractive thing about him, precisely because he is not trying to be attractive. You want what he has. Read the rest of this honestly, because it is going to show you exactly how far you are from him right now. Where you actually stand, answer these to yourself. Do not perform the answers. Nobody is watching this part. After you pray, do you scan yourself for a feeling and feel that the prayer failed if the feeling did not come? If yes, you are still treating the feeling as the receipt. You are at the start of the map, not the end. When you make a long prostration, is part of you aware of how long it is? Is there a quiet observer noting your own devotion? That observer is the ego, standing at the edge of the floor, keeping score. Do you compare your prayer today to your prayer last week? Do you have a private sense of whether you are improving? That comparison is the ledger. It feels like growth. It is a trap. When prostration feels dry, no tears, no warmth, nothing, do you conclude you were far from Allah that day? If yes, you are still reading your own weather as a verdict. Do you secretly enjoy being seen as someone who prays with feeling? Does a small part of you want people to notice your stillness? Be honest. This is the hidden showing off, and almost everyone has some of it. When something good happens after a heartfelt prayer, Do you feel your prayer earned it, that you unlocked it? That is the manifestation trap of wearing religious clothes. You made yourself the cause. Here is the uncomfortable part. Most people reading this will answer yes to nearly all of them. That is not a reason for shame. It is a map. It tells you the ego has been on the floor with you the whole time, quietly running the numbers while you thought you were alone with Allah. The point of these questions is not to make you feel caught. It is to show you that the checking itself, the scanning, the scoring, the comparison, is the very thing standing between you and the stillness of the man in the back row. You cannot think your way out of that. You can only practice your way out. And that begins tonight. What to do tonight, you cannot force the 3 signs. Reaching for them is the very thing that scares them off. So you leave the signs alone and work only on the parts you are allowed to touch. There are 3, and you can start at the next prayer. First, slow down the words. Most of us race through the prostration phrase, "Glory to my Lord, the Most High," the way we rattle off a phone number to be done with it. Say it 3 times, then say it 3 more. On the second set, mean it. Put the meaning on each breath instead of skating over the sound. This is Ghazali's method exactly. He taught that the words are a shell, and presence of heart is what fills them. Second, pause before you go down. Stand for 1 extra breath and silently name the act itself, not the thing you want to ask for, but the motion. I am about to put the highest part of my body on the floor. It costs 3 seconds, and it drops your intention in at the exact doorway where the prostration starts to mean something, instead of letting your body fall while your mind is 3 rooms away. Third, once you are down, do not rise the second the minimum is met. Stay 1 breath longer than habit wants. Not to perform extra worship, nobody is watching. Only to refuse to let the moment end at the exact instant your internal timer says it is allowed to. None of this manufactures the signs. You still cannot summon presence, or the fear that settles, or the relief where you feared defeat. Those come down on their own schedule, and it was never yours. But you can stop standing in their way. You can stop racing the posture, arriving late, leaving early. And most of the time, clearing your own blockage out of the path turns out to be the whole job. You are still not going to know, with certainty, whether any single prostration was accepted. That was never going to change, and by now you understand why it was never allowed to. Here is the turn. You spent this whole time asking a question about yourself. Did I get in? Was I received? Did that count? Every one of those questions has you at the center of your feeling, your rank, your receipt. And that is exactly the thing the floor was built to dissolve. The prostration was never a machine for producing proof that you are doing well. It was the one place in your day where you get to stop being the center of your own attention. The relief you sometimes feel down there is not the relief of passing a test. It is the relief of, for a few seconds, being let off the exhausting job of watching yourself. So maybe the whole question flips. You were never meant to know from inside the moment whether you were accepted. You were meant to keep returning your forehead to the floor. Dry days and undone days. The years stacking up behind you and slowly stopping needing to know. The not knowing is not the problem to solve. The not knowing is the worship. It is where trust actually lives, because trust that demands a receipt was never trust at all. The man in the back row is not calm because he passed. He is calm because he stopped asking whether he passed, and handed that entire question to the only one who holds the answer. Everything I described tonight is written out as practice in one book. Feel your prayer again. The link is in the description and the pinned Comment. And it begins where the path actually begins. You ask Allah for a guide, because He has never walked alone. So tell me, honestly, and only to yourself first, when you rise from the floor, whose verdict are you really waiting for, Allah's or your own?